Introduction. Welcome to the edges of the empire. Let your mind drift far from the clamor of your day. You're about to journey along the craggy, frost-bitten ridges of northern China. Not as a traveler, not as a tourist, but as a laborer. One among thousands. No name, no glory. Just stones, snow whined and orders barked from above. In this episode of Boring History for Sleep, we'll explore the exhausting rhythm of daily life for those who built one of the world's most iconic structures, the Great Wall of China. Then, we'll shift into the slow, sweeping story of Li Zi, the mail carrier turned rebel, who briefly wore an emperor's crown. From there, we'll descend into the eerie quiet of the Terracotta Army, listening for whispers in Clay's silence. And finally, we'll slip behind the red walls of the Forbidden City, where comfort cloaked control and luxury demanded obedience. But first let us walk with tired feet, chapped hands, and aching backs. You are no general, no royal, just one among thousands sent to the edge of civilization, to hold a wall that never ended. Segment 1. Why it sucked to be a worker on the Great Wall. Imagine waking before the sun, not to the smell of breakfast or the warmth of home, but to cold winds slicing across a mountainside, your blanket still stiff with frost. You're not a soldier, not a volunteer. You're a conscript, a farmer pulled from your fields, or perhaps a criminal sentenced to serve the empire, not behind bars, but behind stone. You sleep in a crude shelter of mud and reeds, shared with dozens of other laborers. The scent of sweat and damp soil clings to everything. You hear coughing constant, hacking, harsh, and you know what it means. Some won't see the next season. There's no breakfast waiting, just a bit of porridge, when available, ladled out in wooden bowls by equally tired hands. You eat in silence. The overseers don't like noise. Orders are shouted. Everyone moves quickly. The tools are simple. Baskets, shovels, crude wooden sleds. The work is brutal. Stones must be moved, massive stones dragged across impossible slopes, lifted into place, fitted and packed with tamped earth. The wind cuts through your clothing, and the sun, when it rises, offers no comfort, just glare. Some die from the cold, others fall from the heights, and still others collapse simply from exhaustion. You are replaceable. There are always more laborers. Some sources suggest hundreds of thousands may have died, constructing various stretches of the wall, though no one counted the way they did for generals or emperors. But even as you suffer, you're not just building a wall. You're part of a grand illusion, a performance of power. The wall stretches in all directions, sometimes little more than rammed earth, sometimes a true fortress of stone. It snakes across deserts, forests, and peaks, a line drawn by emperors who feared what lay beyond. You learn quickly that it's not truly meant to keep enemies out. It's to show the Mon youth that the empire is watching, that the empire is everywhere, that laborers like you are expendable. But the wall is not. The seasons pass. The work never ends. You build through blistering summers and ice-laced winters. Your hands are cracked, your body bent. Nights are restless, cold, sore, hungry. And still, you rise again before the sun, because you have no choice, and because the wall, like the empire, always demands more. Segment 2. The Rebellion of Li Zisheng. From postal worker to rebel emperor, let us leave behind the wallet's cold stones, its weary footsteps, and drift down into the valleys and towns of a crumbling dynasty. It is the early 1600s. The Ming Empire, once majestic, is sagging under its own weight. Taxes are rising. Famines sweep the land. Locusts strip fields bare. The emperor rarely leaves his palace. And somewhere in the north, a postal worker is growing restless. Li Zi. His name was not born to legend, nor to privilege. He was not the son of a minister or a merchant. He was born in 1606, in a small village in Shanxi province, a child of famine. His father was a peasant. His youth, marked by hunger and hard work. He later found employment as a courier in the Imperial Postal Service, riding through wind and rain to deliver orders and documents between distant towns. It was honest work, but not safe. The roads were often dangerous, and during one particularly lean year, when Li could no longer pay a minor debt, he was imprisoned, beaten, stripped of his job, and perhaps in that cell, surrounded by the forgotten poor, something hardened in him. By the late 1620s, the cracks in the Ming dynasty had widened into gaping wounds. Corruption bloomed in every corner of the court. Eunuchs controlled the emperor. Banditry spread through the countryside like wildfire. and the people, especially the peasants, began to listen to anyone who promised bread and order. Li began with a small band, a few dozen men, but his charisma was undeniable. He had a deep voice and a gift for speech. He spoke of justice, of fairness, of turning the world upside down. His troops swelled in number. Former soldiers joined him. Disgraced scholars, peasants found hope in his banner. He became known as the Dashing King, a title not for vanity, but for the speed of his movements. His forces moved swiftly, striking at weak garrisons, capturing supplies, always staying ahead of imperial forces. And then, in 1644, Li Zicheng marched on Beijing. By then, the Ming emperor was a shadow of a ruler. His court had collapsed into panic. His armies defeated or demoralized. As Li's rebel forces approached, the Emperor Chongzhen retreated to a quiet corner of the Forbidden City and, in the ultimate gesture of shame, took his own life beneath a gnarled tree on a nearby hill. The tree still stands. Li entered the city, unopposed. He declared a new dynasty, proclaimed himself emperor, but the dream was short. His rule lasted mere weeks. The Ming general Wu Sangui, unwilling to accept a peasant as emperor, allied with the Manchus beyond the Great Wall, those very enemies the wall was meant to repel. Together, they stormed Beijing. Li Zicheng fled, his forces unraveling. He was hunted, his followers scattered. His end is uncertain. Some say he died in a peasant's hut, killed by a local militia. Others say he took his own life. A few even believe he escaped and lived as a monk. What is certain is this. For a brief, flickering moment, a postal worker seized the heart of an empire. His rise was swift, his fall inevitable, and the dynasty he toppled was soon replaced by one that would last for centuries, the Qing. And so, the rebellion of Li Zicheng became a parable not of success, but of how deep despair can turn into revolution, how a man with nothing can shake the world, and how fragile even the most ancient walls can become when neglected too long. Segment 3. The Terracotta Army's Silent Faces. What 8,000 clay soldiers reveal and what they conceal now. Let us drift even farther back to millennia into the past to a quiet field in central China. Beneath the soil, long hidden by centuries of silence, lie thousands of warriors, not of flesh and blood, but of earth and fire. They stand in formation still. They do not speak, yet they are telling us something. This is the resting place of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, a man whose ambition was as vast as his realm, and whose fear of death was nearly as great as his hunger for power. He unified the warring states, standardized weights, writing, even the axle widths of carts. And when he died in 210 BCE, he did not go gently into the afterlife. He prepared, he commanded that a vast underground empire be built for him, not just a tomb, but a world below the world, a mirror of his living kingdom. Palaces, towers, stables, bronze, birds, musicians made of clay, and at the heart of it, his army, 10,000 strong, though only about 8,000 have been uncovered. Warriors molded from terracotta, baked in kilns, lined in precise military formation beneath the ground, each figure life-sized, each face distinct, eyebrows arched differently, hair braided in varied styles. Some smile faintly, others look stern. They wear armor, or robes. They hold weapons once sharp with bronze, infantry, archers, charioteers, generals. But they do not march. They wait. The site was not discovered until 1974, by farmers digging a well. At first, they thought they'd found shards of pottery, but as the digging continued, the scope became clear. An army sleeping underfoot. And yet, despite all we've learned, so much remains uncertain. We still have not opened the emperor's actual tomb chamber buried beneath a mound nearby, said by ancient records to contain rivers of flowing mercury, pearls as stars, traps and curses to guard the sovereign's rest. Tests of the soil have confirmed high mercury levels, but the tomb remains sealed. Why? In part, out of caution. The preservation techniques used in the Qin era were sophisticated but delicate. Early excavation of the terracotta figures led to fading of pigments within minutes. Some believe the tomb chamber may contain delicate scrolls, wooden artifacts, even maps, none of which could survive hasty excavation. Others fear that opening the chamber would disturb a sacred equilibrium, or release toxins sealed for centuries. So, the emperor sleeps, and his soldiers keep watch, generation after generation. What do they conceal? Perhaps more than we dare guess. They hide the full extent of Qin Shi Huang's fears of rebellion, of mortality, of chaos. They masked the brutal labor that created them thousands of conscripts and craftsmen, many of whom likely died during the tomb's construction. Their names forgotten. They guard the emperor's vision of control and afterlife, not of peace, but of hierarchy, formation, and military readiness. But in their silence, they also speak of ancient dreams, of the way art and power, and of a civilization that understood both the permanence of stone and the impermanence of life. And so we watch them, even as they watch nothing, and we wonder what they have seen, waiting in the earth all this time. Segment 4. A Night in the Forbidden City. Imperial hush, rigid protocol, and haunting silence behind the red walls. As we gently step away from the silent ranks of terracotta soldiers, we move forward in time once more, now to the heart of Ming and Qing China, to the quiet center of imperial power, a place of opulence, hierarchy, and hush. Welcome to the Forbidden City. It is evening in Beijing. The sun has dipped behind the walls, casting long shadows across crimson corridors and glazed tile roofs. The city beyond the gates is teeming, markets closing, lanterns being lit, carts rattling homeward. But inside these walls, 200 acres wide, surrounded by a wide moat and high ramparts, the world is another place entirely. Not as a foreigner, for they would not be permitted within, not as a noble, not even as a god. You are a silent observer, a shadow among shadows, watching as the life within these stone walls unfolds and quiets for the night. At its height, the Forbidden City held over 9,000 rooms, throne halls, audience chambers, palaces for wives and concubines, quarters for eunuchs, kitchens, libraries, shrines, all arranged in strict axial symmetry. Every corner planned, every wall, every doorway a threshold, not just of space, but of rank. Now imagine being here after the sun has set. The emperor himself is retiring. He moves under silk canopies, surrounded by eunuchs trained never to look him directly in the eye. His destination for the evening may vary. He might sleep in a different palace every night, a practice meant to prevent assassination. Only a few trusted officials are ever told which room he will rest in. Meals are brought, tasted by servants first, arranged in fine porcelain dishes, most of which will be left untouched. The silence is near total. Eunuchs numbering in the thousands live and work here. Many were castrated as children, taken from poor families, their futures given over to the state. They manage the day-to-day affairs of the inner court, writing memorials, cleaning jade ornaments, tending the royal gardens. Their loyalty is absolute, their power immense, but always shadowed, never spoken of too loudly, never celebrated in public. Some were cruel, others were quiet survivors. In the women's quarters, layers of rank define every interaction. The empress, consorts, concubines, palace maids, each knows her place. A glance can be a threat, a misstep, a disgrace. They speak in hushed tones, their world lit by lanterns and watched by guards who patrolled the narrow walkways. Outside, drums mark the hours, gongs signaled the closing of gates. At night, the Forbidden City does not sleep. It waits. Even the architecture enforces ritual. Gates may only be passed in one direction. Certain thresholds are forbidden to all but the emperor. The number of roof animals on each building denotes its importance. The main throne hall boasts 10 mythical beasts. No structure was allowed more. But even here, amid luxury, there is a certain kind of quiet suffering. The emperor, despite all his power, is isolated. Few dare speak candidly to him. His world is scripted, his movements observed. His writings, whether poetic or administrative, are preserved for eternity, even as he himself may feel increasingly abstracted from reality. The empress, too, is bound by etiquette as much as by silk. She may command the palace staff, yet her fate depends on producing a male heir and maintaining political alliances. Concubines rise or fall by rumor and favor, their futures rest in glances, in palace intrigues, whispered behind gold-painted screens. And all of this plays out in a city within a city, a world behind red walls. The Forbidden City is not merely a palace. It is a mechanism, a machine of ritual, appearance, protocol, and silence. Even now, when you walk its vast courtyards, a certain hush remains. The sounds are swallowed by the great stone paving, absorbed into the lacquered beams. At night, this hush deepens. The moonlight glints on golden roof tiles. Cypress trees whisper faintly in the wind. Somewhere, a servant coughs behind a carved screen. A fox slips through the shadows, and the great gates remain closed until the next morning, when the court will rise again, and life frigid. But for now, Everything is still, and in that stillness, you can feel it. The weight of centuries, of thousands who lived and died behind these walls, of power held and relinquished, of whispered fears and faded dreams, and most of all, the strange hush that lingers when so many lives have passed through a place and none can return. Conclusion. As our journey through the Great Wall's forgotten laborers, a rebel's rise, clay soldiers frozen in time, and the ritual-bound hush of the Forbidden City draws to a close, you may find yourself reflecting on the human rhythms beneath the grand sweep of history, beneath every stone laid by hand, behind every throne surrounded by silence. There were people exhausted, hopeful, cold, ambitious, afraid, and though their voices have faded, the spaces they moved through still speak. Tonight, perhaps, you hear them faintly, not in cries or clamor, but in the quiet patterns of a world once wide awake, now gently asleep. Close your eyes, and let the silence of ancient China carry you softly into dreams. That's all about this video. We see you in the next video of Theory Story.